We're continuing Perek Aleph in Sefer Shoftim. As remembered, we're holding in the middle of a story. And the story is that Osniel ben Kenaz, the first Shofet, is commissioned Peri's offer to conquer Kiryas Sefer, which the Gemara in Maseches Tmura learns that Shalei Kederech Pshutoi. It doesn't mean really physical milchama for Kiryas Sefer, not Pshutoi Shel Mikro, but it means that those halachos that when Yishtakchu b'mei Evla Shel Moshe, whether it's 300, 3,000, 1,800, 1,700, different Gersos and different Gemaras and different Midrashim, Osni Kolev said that whoever will conquer those, whoever be machzer those halachas mitoich bilpuloi, he will give him his daughter Achsa, who was Eina from the four women, the Yefefia is Shebe'oilom, Kolaroya, Isa Koyes Alishtoi, and he makes a shidduch. And goes Kolev. We spoke about who was Kolev, what did he do, but in any event, here we're holding that Kolev conquered. And let's just see the psukim before we go to the next pasuk. Vayilken lo Osniel ben Kenaz achi Kolev hakot mimenu, vayiten lo es achso bitoi leisha, vayi bevoyo, vatesiseyu lish oil me'eis avia asode, vatitzach malach hamoy vayomer lo Kolev malach. Okay. Vatoimer hovali brocho ki eretz hanegev nesatoni, v'nosata li gulois mayim, v'yitin lo Kolev es gulois ili v'gulita. The Rashi says, we saw it last week at the end of this year. Rashi says, eretz hanegev, odom shebeisoi menugov mikol tuv, she'ein bo elo teire. What kind of shidduch did you make with me? And that's the person you're expecting me to live the rest of my life with. She was bargaining with her father to get a piece of real estate for their livelihood. Vayiten lo, sagt Rashi Gula Isis Debe Sabal, he gave her for Parnos. So this is the story. Now here comes the pasuk. Mitten, we're holding now that Shevet Yehuda got instruction by the Urim V'tumim to go ahead and conquer the residual parts of Eretz Yisrael, the regions which were not conquered yet, B'mei Yeshua. Ubnei Keini, Haposuk mitnamo, out of nowhere, Choisen Moshe, Olu Meir Hatmorim, as Bnei Yehuda, Midbar Yehuda asher b'negev harod, Vayelech Vayeshev Ehes Ha'om. And then the psukim continue. Vayelech Yehuda Shimon Ocher Vayakov Saknani Vayikol Azav Ashkel Gvula. But out of nowhere, in the middle of the story of Osniel ben Kenaz, at the end of the story of Osniel ben Kenaz, comes in the pasuk which seemingly has zero connection to what the Perek is talking about, and he's telling us, Olu Meirat Morim, Bnei Kein Choisen Moshe, as Bnei Yehuda Midbar Yehuda asher b'negev harod, Vayelech Vayeshev Es Ha'om. Zocht Rashi. Anybody who has the Tanakh, you look inside. If not, it's right on top. Meirat Morim hi Yericho, shenita lohem dushno shel Yericho leoichlo ad sheibone beis hamikdash. Umi sheibone beis habechira bechelko yitleno, kedei sheyeh lekol Yisrael chelek bebeis habechira. Unesonuo libnei Yisroi 440 shono, והתלמידים שבוהם הניחוהו, והולכו אצל אוסניל בן כנז ויעבץ במדבר יהודה אשר בנגב הרוד, לא מותר. Rashi wants to have the connection. They're coming into Eretz Yisrael. We know that the first place Klal Yisrael captured when they came to Eretz Yisrael, the beginning of May Yeshua, more says Yericho is the mafteach, is the shlisel to Eretz Yisrael. The reason why they're coming to Yericho, not because no more no less, the Ma'boris Hayarden, which is the bridge where Yeshua took Klal Yisrael to cross the Yarden in Yud Benisa when they came, was right outside of Yericho. So Yericho apparently is the first city on the map that they coming in. But Yericho, the Gemara says about Yericho, Ein lechosag. There were 31 melachim in Eretz Yisrael, and there's nobody, one of the 31 melachim, none of them that didn't have a emissar as an embassy in Yericho. Yericho was the capital of Eretz Yisrael. I just want to say something about Yericho, because before we go into Yericho, but before we can explain what Yericho, what was Rashi? They conquered Yericho. In Yericho, there was a land in the middle, Tov Kuf. Al Tov Kuf, Rashi says. Rashi over here does that. There was Tov Kuf Amo Al Tov Kuf Amo. Just to give you a little bit of a real estate synopsis. And Amo, according to the Chazon, is 60 centimeter. So Tov Kuf Amo, 500 to 300 meter. 300 meter by 300 meter is 90,000 square meter, 90 dunam, as they call it in the people. A dunam is around just over, is 4.069 dunam in an acre. We're talking about on or about 23 acres. This is the shetach. By the way, this was the equivalent shetach of Har HaBayis later on when they're going to build a Beis HaMikdash. Tov Kuf Ama, Tov Kuf Ama. 23 acres, a piece of land was square, 300 meter by 300 meter, and that was a shul. In Yericho, which was a Zaftika city, there was Doishno Shel Yericho, agricultural, the best, as they called by us in Hungarian, the Smetane from Yericho, was that square of 300 meter by 300 meter, and Kol Zman that Klal Yisrael didn't build a Beis HaMikdash, from the time of coming into Eretz Yisrael until Shlomo HaMelech builds the Bayis Rishon, takes exactly 440 years. They build the first Beis HaMikdash. 40 years ago in the Midbar. So as soon as they come to Eretz Yisrael, from the moment they cross the Yarden until Shlomo HaMelech finishes, completes the Beis HaMikdash, it's 440 years. Those 440 years, okay, Klal Yisrael did a shtickle patent. Why? Because they're going to come to Yerushalayim and they're going to build the Beis HaMikdash. And the halacha is that each and every one of the tribes have to have a chelik in Beis HaMikdash. So what do? It's a sugya sagmor bekama masechtes in Shas. Shaila Yerushalayim, Nischalko Lishvotim Yerushalayim, Lo Nischalko Lishvotim. Notwithstanding where the position is in Yerushalayim, if it's Nischalko or not Nischalko, the Mokem HaMikdash, the entire Har HaBayis, had to be belonging to Gans Klal Yisrael. Even though Yerushalayim was in Chelik on the borderline of Binyamin and Yehuda, the Gemara comes along and says there was a Ritzua, Yotzes, there was a border, was in between Bamish, in middle Har HaBayis, the Mizbeach was Boni, Keren, Mizrachis, Droimis. It was passing by the Gvul between Yehuda and Binyamin. Yerushalayim is in Shevet Yehuda and Binyamin together. But being that each one of the Shvatim needs to have a part of Beis HaMikdash, so they needed to have, so we'll see in Sefer, you look later and you look at Sefer Divrei Hayomim, how exactly they did it. They took money from each one, they made a Magbis. But how do you do that? So what do? They had an eitzim. They went to Yericho. Yericho is the first place they conquered. They took the Smetan of Yericho, was exactly the same blueprint of Beis HaMikdash, Tov Kuf Amo, Al Tov Kuf Amo. They gave it as a deposit to Yisrael. Yisrael, State in Parshas Ba'aleis, Moshe Rabbeinu asks him, please do not depart from us. We need you, V'yisolonu le'einayim, we need you as one of the people to lead our way in the Midbar. And V'hoya Toiv, it says a pasuk, we're going to give you. What is the Toiv? The Toiv is Doishlo Shel Yericho Shteit Sifri. You're going to get rewarded. We're going to give you. What are we going to give you? For the 440 years until we're going to build the Beis HaMikdash, this square of Yericho will be given to your children when they come to Eretz Yisrael, and they're going to be able to have the best agricultural, the best Doishno Shel Yericho. After 440 years, they made a swap. They told them, listen, you got a matana for 440 years, got to give it back. Shevet Binyamin, which was the Balabos of the vast majority of this Tov Kuf Amo in Yerushalayim, made a swap, and he took back, in exchange of giving back the 440, the Tov Kuf Amo, Tov Kuf Amo, the Moikom HaMikdash, he gave it to Gans Klal Yisrael to have a chelik in it. Binyamin got that part in Yericho back from Yisroel Sefer. This is the story that's happening here. But what is he doing here? How to get and find and voil. What was his door? Rashi says in the middle that they gave it, look at Rashi again, they gave it to Bnei Yericho, that Talmidim Shebo inichuo, veholchu etzel osnil meknas yavetz lil moteir. So mitnamo, we're talking about yavetz, we're talking about the snil ben kenaz, telling you, is the pasuk tells you like an indentation, in parentheses. Remember with snil ben kenaz was machzer sater bepilpulo, he's going to be the one leading them through the first wars, conquering the first Shefet. You should know that when they came to Yericho, they gave the Doishna Shel Yericho to Bnei Yisrael, and they swapped, they gave it back after 440 years. Notwithstanding the above, the Talmidei Chachamim from the Einiklach, from Yericho, from Yisrael, went to Midbar Yehuda Shebenegev Arod. I would like to talk about it a little bit today. And they went to learn Torah about Snil ben Kenaz. And that's the Shaykhs, that's the association to here. By the way, Yericho is nicht gepostet Zach. It's a Rebbeische Stadt. Look at the Mishnah in the beginning of Perek Gimel from Tomid. A Mishnah, everybody learned Mishnah. Steht mi Yericho Yishomim kol ben Arze Makish betzalzol. Mi Yericho Yishomim kol achol. Mi Yericho Yishomim kol Gvini Kruz. Mi Yericho Yishomim kol Ho'etz she'oso ben Ktin. Muchni lekiyor. Mi Yericho Yishomim kol Ashir. Mi Yericho Yishomim kol Ashefo. ויש אומרים אף כהן של כהן גודל שימסקס השם ביום הכיפור מיריחו ימריח עם ריח פיתומקטרס עד כדי כך as state as a kala that was a kala she didn't have to be misbasim, she didn't have to go have a perfumery, even though in the distance at those days it was on or about 21 and a half miles physically. I'm talking from Beis Hamikdash till Doishno Shel Yericho, okay. I'm putting it in very much if and but on or about 33 kilometers. But it's a nace because to say that they used to hear the Kol HaShefo, the guy was banging in the morning from the Tzalzo, and the guy was Ongiv Kohen Gadol used to say Ona Hashem Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. We sit in Yericho, we can't hell. I was thinking, what's happening? I want to show you a Ravid. This Ravid is a Mitzir Rabbi Lorais. Zog the Ravid. This is a Ravid and Tomid. Anybody can open up a Gemara B'choros. There's a Gemara Maseches Tomid. On the side there's a Ravid. Zog the Ravid. Look at the Ravid. Umoiri Arav HaChusid Zechoin Olevu. Okay. Omar. The Kol Hanav the Ktani Shenishmoi B'Yericho Ma'aseh Nisim Oyer. Well, it's a miracle. It's a nice. V'dafka B'Yericho Nishma V'loi B'Shar Tzdodim. On the way to Yericho, there's a bunch of farms and villages. No, but Nish Gehel though. The only place that they heard it in Yericho. Why? Mipnei sheYericho hoiso kemoi Yerushalayim. Mipnei shehoiso tchilas kibush Eretz Yisrael. Ukemoi de trumas dogan tzorich litroim, kein nitremo Eretz Yisrael atzmo. B'shvil kach hitrimo Yeshua aliyos kodesh kemoi Yerushalayim. Ve'onishmoim bo kol hanach dektani kedei sheyerichu bnei Odom, שביריחו יש קצת קדושה כמו בירושלים. ולפיכך באלה יוסר משאר הדבורים, מפני שכל אלה הדבורים, כל שאר הגודל וצלטל וגביני קרוז עם תחילס אבוידו, המעמידים את הכהנים לעבודוסם ולווים להיכנס לקטורס תחילס אבוידוס פנים. מה יודע קרייבן? חסידי של רייבן. מה יודע קרייבן? Der Rav HaChosid, Shidor Rav Nosson, Rabbi Shal HaRayved, Geisen Rav Nosson, and the Rav calls him in a few places Rav HaChosid. I assume he doesn't say who, but I assume it's Rav Nosson. Rav HaChosid doesn't mean Chosid in your niggin of the question. But Moira Rav HaChosid, Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael is Samoyer Lekavot. Yerushalayim is Trumas Dogan. Yerushalayim is Kemo Yerushalayim. Tchilas Kibush Eretz Yisrael. Azay v'midaf Toirem zayin Trumas Dogan. You also have to be Toirem in Eretz Yisrael, and the Truma has to be Kodesh. The same kedusha there is also a kedusha in Yerushalayim, in Yericho. Okay, and they wanted people the onshmeking hasido abisla kedusha. So mainly the nisim, the miracles were catered accordingly. Okay, fine. So this Yericho is a heilig ishtot. It's Trumas Dogon, and that's the part that's given to Bnei, to the Tzetzoim of Yisroi as a gift for being a nine for Klal Yisrael, Be'ez Chanoiseinu Bamidbar. Look at the Ramban al Teireh. The Ramban al Torah says in the Brochos of Bolok, steht Vayares Akeini Vayisa Meshol Vayoyma, Eison Moishovecho Vesim Basel Akinecho. Zog der Ramban, Vetan Vayares Akeini Gamkin Sheroes Arzum, Ki Im Hamolek Oyo Yoshev, Vayisa Meshol Vayoyma Lem Bederech Eitzo, Eison Moishovecho Vesim Basel Akinecho. Kloima, Sim Moishovecho B'Mokom Eison Ubesel Akinecho, Shetosu V'Tered B'Toich Hamolek Pentisofe Imoy, V'Tosim Besel Eison Moishovecho Misrol K'Moy Sheomar, Ubnei Keini Choisen Moshe Olu Meirat Moribus Bnei Yehuda. The Ramban brings unsere Posuk. The Ramban goes throughout. We know there was some kind of a pact between Yisro and his family and the Amaleki. And throughout Tanakh, we find many places. See by Shaul, he says, Sur, get away because Tisofa, I'm going to kill the Amaleki. He tells the Bnei Keini, get out. Keini with the Tzetzoim of Yisro used to dwell together with the Amaleki. So Bilam tells him, Eison Moishavecho, Vesim Basela Kinecho. Put yourself in a place where you could dwell. Basela, go with Klal Yisrael, get out of Amalek. And the Raya is of the Ramban, Ubnei Keini brings unsere Posuk, Choyse Moshe Olam Yirat Morim. In other words, there's already a remez that Bnei Keini will be oiker, uproot Moishavam from Amalek in Zman from the Vu of Bilam and go to Bnei Yehuda in the Arod of the Negev. I would like to focus on it, and you'll be fascinated if you just listen in very careful. There's a Radak and there's a Sifri, and there's something that you probably never heard of before, which is Negeya to the Heintike Politische Matzav in Eretz Yisrael. So here we go. The Radak says 3 Pshotim, Vayoloch Vayeshev Esa'om. Okay, Zog der Radak. Who is this Vayelech? It says in the Posuk, Vayelech Vayeshev. Who is this Vayelech Vayeshev? Who are we talking about? Zog der Radak. Halaroi shebnei Keini Omar. Vehoch bnei Mishpocha Im of Yoshua bnei Yehuda b'Midbar Yehuda. Ve'akosov lo siper lama olu mirat morim. O im oyu Yoshu shom im aknani. Doesn't say where they sitting there with the Knani. All of a sudden they say they uprooted themselves in Yericho and they went to meet Bar Yehuda to Osniel ben Kenas. Ve'efsha shoyi yishom im aknani yoshvim. Ki Yisrael lohoyim bnei Yisrael ki ken koso vayelech el artzoi. Upashas vayom Moshe lohoyim pash vayish meisu b'zman echod b'shona hashenis letzeis meretz Mitzrayim. V'choyvav hu Yisrael ki Moshe koso bnei choyvav choyvav Moshe. Upash vayish meYisrael sheloi b'mkoymo nichtavo lechaber dvar Yisrael im Amalek. Ki Amalek heira לישראל בצייסו ממצרים והיצר להם, ולפישך שומע הקדוש ברוך הוא הדוב רצף כל הדרך כמו שמנמחו בהשם בעמלק מדור דרך, וישראל היטיב לישראל וסומח בטויבוסו, והיטיב להם בעצוסו, ושומע לו הקדוש ברוך הוא הטוב רצף כל הדרך. כי הנה הוא אומר שיושו בונו מבני יהודו ונוסנו להם מוקם לשבס בארצום, ושובו לדס ישראל, whoever was not, Yisrael himself was Megayer, but so not all of them were Yidden. They were Megaya. Ubimei Shor Yoshvim Amalek ki be'oilum bo Yoshvim no yisim imokel u'mokem. They were thinking tziganers. They were plating, right? Ve'omar lahem Shor suru redu mitoich Amaleki ato osisa chesed ibnei Yisrael. Ina chesed o yeshom elei lo'oilum me Yehu yoyno ben Rechel v'yo'ov v'nichva b'Yisrael u'b'meir Hanovi, so on and so forth. Skip a little bit. Ve'ato shelo kdu bnei Yehuda Chevron. Just learned that Bnei Yehuda conquered Chevron, Osniel ben Kenaz conquered Chevron and conquered Shiurei Sefer. Oyu yoishvim im aknaini bechevron beir somuchlo nikras irat morim. Lechtik talk. Shret nicht wegen Yericho. Next to Chevron, there is a little village called Irat Morim. Nothing to do with Chevron. Uksheloknu lochdu Bnei Yehuda Chevron. All Misham Besholem, ki kol lem bnei Yehuda Sholem bilachmim v'aknaini, sheyalem b'bnei v'lo yasufu imom, k'mo shekol lem Shol, ve'ol Misham Besholem v'yoshu b'midbar Yehuda bnei Yehuda, ze anire li miderech hapshat miderech hasvor. The Radak macht sich nicht wissentlich von alle Chazals. He says, you know what, they went to Chevron, on the side of Kiryat Arba of today, there was a place called Irat Morim, the village of the date village, and they were sitting there together with the Knainim, and they're telling them, pull out, come with us, They took him away from the Irat Morim where Mishpachas Yisod, the Tzitzoim for Yisod dwell, and they came to live, to be together with Bnei Yehuda, who dwelled in Hebron, in Midbar Yehuda, which is the outskirts of Hebron, and they told him, please get out. That's Kach Nir Al Pi Pshuta, this is of the Ramban, the Radak. V'Rabu Seinu Dorshu, second shot. Ki Bnei Yisrael nonu Irat Morim v'Yericho ledaitom. The Radak is nicht zufrieden that it's Yericho. כמו שתרגם יונס אסור לבני קייני, ואומר כי מה שאומר משה רבינו והוא יעתוי והוא אשר יהייתי וימונו ואיתם לא חודשתו שיריך 500 וינלכו מדחלק, אומר מי שיבונה בסמיתוש בחלקו יהיה שלא בין כך נסנו לבני ישראל, והויו ביודום 400 שונו, ו40 שונו, עד שנבנה בסמיתוש, ואז בו בניום ליפלו ישראל, פילו ישראל להם, שנאמר עולו מירת מורים. Are you listening to this? This pasuk has nothing to do with here. Not right now, עולו מירת מורים. This is a post-data check. He's telling you that they gave Yericho to Doishno Shel Yericho, as every state in Sifri, to Bnei Yisrael, and they all, went not here, not now, in 440 years from now, 420 years, whatever it is. If it's talking about Bisman Yeshua, we saw he's talking about, in the retrospect, he's talking about now, but over 400 years later, they're going to come there. ועם ישראל נשאר ישראל כמו שאל תעזוב ישראל ומה שנאמר וילך אל ארצו שהולך לגיא במשפחתו. So here's the second shot, and the second shot of the Radak is that they dwelled in Yericho, and Olum Yirat Morim doesn't mean now. Olum Yirat Morim means later on when they're going to have to swap it with Bnei Binyamin, they're going to do it. Oidor Shubei, the third shot. So what's the shaykh of here? It's a good kasha. Oy dor shboy, ki ma she'omar olu mirat morim, she'inichu oyse me'atzmom, she'olchu motor b'midbar Yehuda mosliel ben knas u'yavetz, kemoi she'kosu, v'mishpacho yistzofrim, hey makinim, haboyim machmas avi b'sechel. So here's the third shot that they went. Rashi makes a combination of both pshotim, the second and the third shot. According to Rashi, let's stick right now to Rashi. Rashi learns that be'emes they gave him Doishno Shel Yericho is free, but Bein HaTayim, during those 440 years, the Talmid Chachamim of the Mishpachas Tzetzoi Beis Yisrael went to Midbar Yehuda to Osniel ben Kenaz to learn by him Torah. So Rashi takes the second and the third shot. According to Rashi, much more Muzbak, he's asking a kasha. He's talking about the post-dated check. First is the older son. We just telling you the indentation. Yericho. Now they gave Kilu. He's telling a story, and we gave now Yericho to, and then later they're going to come and they're going to come back, and the whole 440 they didn't depart. I would like to learn with you today. Look at the second page in the Sifri and Parshas Balais, and I want to learn with you something which is fascinating. Steht Sifri and Parshas Balais. ומשפחת סופרים יויש ויעבץ תרעתים שמעתים סוכוסים. That's the way they're worded in דברי היום. יויש ויעבץ שהניחו הסיריחו הם הקינים הבואים שהויו בארץ ישראל. Listen to this. והולכו להם אצל יעבץ לארויד ללמוד ממנו תורה שנאמר ויקרא יעבץ אלוקי ישראל ויאמר לאלוקים אשר שואל הם חסידים ממי ילמדו והוא חסיד למי ילם בואו חסידים ללמוד אצל חסיד שנאמר בני קייני חסד מוישה. זה הספר ועושה ספרי דבי רב. I don't know if you heard of Sifri דבי רב or בזמרד פרדו, of David Pardo. Everybody knows Chasdei David of the Tosefta. There's a Goyen Olam who lived. He was Nifter Yerushalayim, Alicht Narazesim. He was Nifter close to 300 years ago. He's a Talmid Chover with the Chidah. Nicht nur a Talmid Chover, he went on Mechut mit seinem Sohn, Chasdei mit seiner Tochter. And with Rit Al-Ghazi, together in Yerushalayim. He was a major story. His parents both died, and he was adopted. He had an uncle who was a multi-millionaire, the biggest gvir in Turkey, where he lived. And his uncle died, and he wrote in the Torah, he's giving him to his sister Rachel, who went with him, and he said to Ken Chaslam et Abentera. Meanwhile, his sister Rachel, in the middle of dating, she fell, she dropped dead, and the whole Yerusha came, and he took the Plemenik. He didn't have kids, the uncle Shmuel. He had Plemenikas, and he said, he gave it to me and my sister. We were adopted by him. His sister's not around, so now I'm around. I'm supposed to get the Yerusha. They said, He gave it to his sister to marry Ben Torah. Ben Torah is not around, no honey, no money. And we taking the money, they went to the Torah, he lost it in Torah. You believe me, he went and he was a Rov. He went around, he was a chief rabbi of Sarajevo, and then he went to Yerushalayim. The Chido took him to Yerushalayim. He was together with the Rital Ghazi and the Chido in Yerushalayim. He made bunches for him. The very well-known Pirush and Tosefta Chasdei David, which is, this is talking about at Kufa before the Vilna Gaon. We're talking about Kufa of over 300 years ago. And he had a Pirush on the Sifri called Sifri Devei Rav, a very famous Pirush Sifri Devei Rav. Look at the Tosefta Chasdei David, look at him, I'm quoting him, you have to see it inside to believe it. Right? Oroid was in Chutz La'aretz. Okay? B'chutz La'aretz. V'chein Kosav Maharan, B'shom Matzosi Kosov. Maharan is one of his... Maharan lived around 500 years ago. He was not the Rishonim, but from the Kufa, before the B'sei Yosef and before the Shulchan Aruch. Omar Maharan, listen to this. The Shom Hoyodar Yavetz, Ve'ibro, the Inu Shapir Avde, Mutter Lotzes Meretz Yisrael, Lul Motera. אבל Yavetz, Kufa Kosher, Nofak Meretz Yisrael, L'chutz La'aretz. ובפרט מה שאומר בגמור את מוד יאבץ הוא סניע לאחי קולב אודם גודל כזה שהחזיר מפופול כל האורך שנשתקו בעבר של מוישה לא מלא לא צס לחוץ לארץ all of a sudden סניע בן כנז the first shayfet makes an exit makes a U-turn leaves Eretz Yisrael and goes to already לחוץ לארץ ואולם דכל אויסם השונים שהויו ישראל בכיבוש הרוצס ובמלחומס חושש יאבץ יהיה באורץ מוכח לתורת גם הוא במלחומס again take him to the army שערי הכל חיובים לוצס למלחמס חויבו חוש כל נפש בתוירו לפיכך בורח לחוץ לארץ כדי שלא יחייב לוצס ויהיה פונוי לעסק בתוירו. I heard from Chaim Kanievsky בזוג האידוס בשעס the Chazanish they came to him Ben Gurion told him לכתחילה they're going to go draft the yeshiva bochum they were handling so they asked the Chazanish was it sein he says ich stock im Breger mit vorn לחוץ לארץ wenn alle yeshiva leiten mit vorn לחוץ לארץ. The Chaim says that Osniel ben Kenaz. He is the one who showed me the Sifri Devei Rav. State the Sifri Devei Rav, as Osniel ben Kenaz didn't want to be bothered with the war, didn't want to go to the army, so he took his pekalach, the Shefet, he's coming, he's conquering Kiryat Sefer, he's conquering Eretz Yisrael. Look at this. Okay? V'chol ze ani oimer l'mashekosa Maharan de'aroi do'isa b'chutz la'aretz. Maharan, eine von der Rishonim sagt, dass Aroid, where Osniel ben Kenaz dwell was in Chutz La'aretz antlaufen, hat nicht gewollt, als mit dem Baderen, he went out to Chutz La'aretz, finished. Aber lekushte de milse oimar, he didn't feel comfortable with it. שלא יהיו אורץ זה בחוץ לארץ, אלא מוקר במדבר יהודו, לא יהיו מארץ ישראל חושב, אלא שיהיו מדבר. ומקרא מולה בספר שופטים, ובני קני אולו מדבר יהודה שבנגב ערד, והיינו הרוי דקום מרוך, ומרוב חשקה בתוירה, פונו לשליאס, פונו לעסק בתוירה, ואש תניח את פי שעושו הבוני מייסה האב ממש, שכן ישרו יושי בכבודי שלא אלו והניח הכל בו למדבר ללמותוירה, כך הבוני הוא יושי בישוש דושתו של יריחוי, והולכו למדבר אצל יעבץ ללמותוירה. וניחו, טו ומה דאמור במדבר שאינו אנושים, והוא היה חסר תלמידים, שלא היו למי ללמוד, וגם היו חוסר למי ללמוד, שכל ישראל טרודי במלחמת ובכיבוש, ובאו החסידים אצל החסיד, ונשמע כולם רצונם, ומי הוא ודאי שאחר זין שונים חוזר ובא לו לארץ, ונות על חלקו בשעס חלקו. Listening to this, he says, this yeshiva, Corona yeshiva, you want to call it Kibush yeshiva, these 7 years, was the Maharan wants to say there wasn't Ever Hayad. Apparently it wasn't Ever Hayad. It was the Chutzlot, was Ever Hayad. He went back over the bridge, he went to Ever Hayad, he went out of Eretz Yisrael. The Maharat Pardo, the Sifri Devei Rav, changes a little bit. He says he's masking that he went away ran for the Muhammad, but he went to the Midbar, in Eretz Yisrael, Midbar Yehuda. And they, he said, Eret Nishgad, the Gemara Tmur says, Eret Nishgad Ketalmidim, the Gesetz is not the Midbar, and Zem Nishgad Ka Rebbe, is the Chassidim gegangen zum Rebbe gemacht an ein Rebiste. Sagt Miu, Vadai, listen to this. Niche Tuve, okay. Omna kefianir masugi ikel mashma sheloi chozar ad achar chiluk. Okay, he says achar zayin shonim, he came to Eretz Yisrael to take his chelik. Osniel ben Kenaz is coming to get his chelik. Umiu basugi betmuro, mikel mashma sheloi chozar ad achar chiluk, mishumar oyo oni. כדי יסו עושים כימה שלא יהיו בעוני, בשעס חילקוי, לא נות על חלקוי. והיינו שום כשנוסס, בס קולב, לישל מסביע סודה כמשמע דלא יהיו לי מידי, ואם איסה שויר שם לא מנות לחלקו ועניוס מחטסי, כסיב היית לכל וסגול גולויס נראה שנוסן לכל מחלקו דיינו בחברון, וכסיב הייתנו לכל וסחברון, והנה, כשזכיתי ללך לחברון, he came to Eretz Yisrael, he went to Hebron, רואיסי מוקם אחד אצל נחל אשקול, I saw in נחל אשקול, right? שום מאור גדול ויש קבוילה ששם קובר סניר בן כנז נראה אמס כדאמור. Are you listening to this? Then he's saying that אומנם בער יכול בנכו משהו שנשאר ראשון משהו שדם עבור תהיה לכם נראה שכל כסורץ בואו גם הם ונוס להם דושת של יריחו עד בניין בית המקדש ועוז פינויס בני בניין בחוזר מקום הראשון כדכסיב הפוסק ובני קייני או למירת מורים ואף על גב דאח קרוב בתחיל הספר שופטים כסיב היה בהליך ראשון שהויר שם יעבץ ואוכו כמשמע, אחר כך חוזרו לחשום, והיו יש ועולים כל הרויס עד כל ולחורבן, שאז נסיורו מן הקסטים שמשייטים בישראל ישראל, right? ונשי בעולים, ועד כאן דברו. Bottom line, der Chasdei David auf der Tesef, der Sifri Levi Rabbi is telling us a Weltschidish. Nicht as if she steht in Moharan that Usniel ben Kenas made a U-turn and went to Chutzoretz. He didn't go out the way for Ayar and Mizrachi, but he went to Midbar Yehuda, Dishgad Gornish. He said there, he says, Zayin Shekibshu, he says for the Psukim Mashma here, that he was there through Zayin Shechilko also. So when the time the tiled the Yerisha, he wasn't in, and now he's coming with his wife. Now we understand the whole parak gives us a different story. They went with him to Ever Yarden, either Ever Yarden, or they went with him to the Midbar Yehuda in Eretz Yisrael. They're allowed, he says, they're allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael because Mutar Latzis Eretz Yisrael Chutzlas L'Mol Torah. But he, Shofet, he stayed in Eretz Yisrael, but didn't want to be in the Balagan, in the Kibush, didn't want to go to the army. He went to Midbar Yehuda. He went to Midbar Yehuda, and don't leave Midbar Yehuda. He taught, he opened the yeshiva, he came back either after Sheva Shekibshu or after Sheva Shekibshu. He comes back with his wife. He missed, it's a Shetal de Yerisha. He missed, he didn't have anything. She comes to her father crying, Eretz HaNegev, we went to Midbar Yehuda, he came back calling him out. The guy went to nowhere, to Yehubitzville, opened the yeshiva, didn't have anything, he wanted not to be in the tumult. The shofar that runs away from his tafkid, he was supposed to, what's his name? And he's not around. He comes back and now he gives a kulas ilis v'kulas tachtis. They, the Bnei Yisrael, are coming to learn by him Torah. They're coming to learn by him Torah, and they are going back afterwards. So this whole pasuk is telling me a story of. He was a shofet. It says he was a shofet. It was after Yeshua. In the counting, in the sphere of the shoftim, in the 40 years of shoftim, he was a shofet right as soon as they came to Eretz Yisrael. Acharei Moisei Yeshua. Moin Shabbos says the Skadim were around. Was Yomim Erichu Shonim Erichu was a year and 10 months, whatever. But he in the Mispar HaShoftim, Shteit Psukim, he was considered a shofet. But his shofet, he didn't want to be involved in the Milchama. As on Tlofen. So either to Vayarn or to the Midbar Yehuda, he opened the yeshiva, he learned with the yeshiva, he came back, and he got back his chaylik. We have a couple of issues to discuss, but we don't have time. So, all I want to just bring up 3 different issues. Shaila is, how do they give this Doishno Shel Yerichai 440 years they give it to Bnei? I just want to leave off with questions, and this is food for thought you can take home with you and think about it. Number 1, in the sugya in Bechoires, in Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph Shteit, we paske that matana is like mecher. The Rambam paske. So l'chura, in as much that they gave it the matana to Bnei Yisrael, to the Tzitzoyim of Yisrael, it's a mecher. The halacha is mecher, is choyze beyovel. So l'chura, how there's a pirish of the Sifri called Dambur the Sifri. Dambur the Sifri fake life on the bottom, it doesn't understand how the 440, how they hold on to 440 years. They had to give it back to Yovel because they got it as a matona. Matona is kemecher, and he's a mecher, he's close to Yovel, 50 years. That's number 1. The MSC is that the Ramban, in the beginning of Makkos, all those who learn Makkos, the Ramban brings the Shitas Rambam. We don't have such a Rambam. Megillah Sester says the Ramban apparently had a different year saying the Rambam. That he learns, more says, if somebody says, Al Menash Shalite Shamteini B'Shvi'is, it's no Ekayim. If he writes, if he says Al Menash Shalite Shamteini Shvi'is, it's mas mamash kozvater. And if a guy says, I'm making a deal with you, al menas a shvi should be mishamet, then it's called mas mamash kozvater, the tot nai is bucket. But if he says al menas shaloit shamtein beshvis, then it's not called mas mamash kozvater. So it's not that the shvis should be mishamet, but you should not. So in mail over here, if somebody says shaloit toch tachzer karka biyovel, is he could also say not that there shouldn't be a din yovel noyeg, but the karka, I'm making a business, I'm saying our geschäft is such, the karka shall is tachzer b'level. I'm sorry?
Who's taking it back?
Oh, that's number one. The problem is there are a few things. Number one, the Ramban says, is azora and the moicher, doesn't make a difference which way. The mecher cannot be everlasting lo'elam, so it's not going to help us as far as yovel. That's number one. Number two.
Can you renew it?
I'm sorry?
Can they renew it every 50 years?
Okay, that's a very, it's every time, you have to make a naya matana, a naya mecher. The Minchas Chinuch comes along and says that if the Gemara says in Bometzia, just a small note, the Gemara in Bometzia, the Faintes, the Gemara says, Omar Rav Chizda, Omar Rav Ktine, Minayin lemoichas adeu l'shishim shana, she'eino chezeres beyovel. Somebody sells the Chatchila for 60 years, eino chezeres beyovel, she'nem avoros l'timochel l'tzmisus, mi she'ein shem yoel l'tzmeses, ein shem yoel ein l'tzmeses, yot tzazu shafal pi she'ein shem yoel ein l'tzmeses. So if you sell it for 440 years, it could be for 1,000,000 years, it could be a 1,000-year lease, you can make it 440 years. But also, since they gave it to Bnei Yisrael ad, she bought it with she's not chayzer b'yovel.
Then I won't have the mecha.
First of all, how do you know Mataram Naslach does the mecha?
Maybe.
Okay, so maybe I, my Zedef fliegt sagen, Efshel etaretz b'doicha kevezog, efshel hakshis b'doicha nicht getroffen. That's number one. Number two, the shaila was there a din? And this is a shir b'fnei us. I don't have time, and I'm going to finish over here. Shaila is, when did the din of shmitin v'yoyvels commence? During the Sheva Shekipshu v'Sheva Shechilku, was those a din shmita v'yoyvel or not?
No.
Say no. So it's a Vels shaila throughout Shas. When did they come? There's the Shitas Rambam, the Shitas Ramban. There's different Shitas. When did they start counting shmitas v'yovelis? Shmiti v'yovelis. As soon as they came right away, they started the shmiti v'yovelis, or they started only after Kibbush v'Chalukah. There's a sukkah like more of it is there. It's a very, very compounded sugi. If the yovel is not noyek till Kibbush v'Chalukah, and they gave Doishna Shel Yericho within the 14 years before, then the halacha is that Pashtus Leis Loiva Rishonim, the halacha is if you sold somebody a soda before the Yovel Noyeg, even if Yoel was Noyeg in the middle, there is no din of Chazor B'Yovel. So if on the tzad that they didn't start counting Shmitzas V'Yovel till Mishkan Shiloi, as Eva is medayik from the Rambam, Mishkan Shiloi was after Shiva Shekibush V'Sheva Shechilku. The way in Gilgal, calls man, the way in Gilgal there was not Shmitim V'Yovelis. Mele is no Yovel. There is it Rosh, just for clarity's sake, there is a Teisa Rosh in Gittin Daf Memches Amudalov says that even Soda is Shenim Kiru B'Sheva Shekib Sheva Shechilku V'afilu L'Loi Noag Be'em Yovel Kivin Sheyitzchil HaYovel Chal HaYovel V'Ashmita. So the din, even in the middle, there's a machlekes Hashem. Most Rishonim hold not like that. So this is a shayla how they give it, and we're going to stop today right here.
The Yichai was destroyed.
One second.
Because you took one